Hello and happy Tuesday. I hope everybody's weekend was productive and satisfying. I know this last weekend was very chaotic for me, and there's a lot of stuff that I wish I could have done this last weekend. I just didn't have the time to do. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm glad that I didn't do. So overall, I feel like my satisfaction level is 10 out of 10 for this last weekend. Today, I want to talk about something that might make you feel, I hope, a little better. I'm going to say this, and it might trigger something in you. It might not. It depends on who you are. I know my listeners have gone through a lot, and a lot of you, just like myself, are learning how to process things in different ways than you might have been used to in the past. Learning how to process things in a healthy way. What happened to you in the past does not define who you are in the present, and will not define who you will become in the future. I'm going to say that one more time. What has happened to you in the past does not define who you are in the present, and will not define who you will be in the future, or who you will become in the future. And I know that hits home for a lot of us, me especially. A lot of things in our lives that happen to us happen very much out of our control. And when things happen to us a lot of the times, and it's out of our control, and it fractures us, a lot of us go through periods of healing where we feel we'll never be normal, or what happened to us is our fault. Or sometimes the fault of others. Sometimes we feel like people around us failed us. Me personally, considering my past, I never felt like I was abandoned by anybody, but I did feel personally at fault for things that happened to me before I was old enough to really understand the concept of fault. Right? And sometimes when the wrong people have access to very intimate, very sensitive parts of your past, they might use that against you to define who you are in the present. And use it against you. Not all the time, but sometimes it happens. And sometimes it'll hit home, especially if it feels like what happened to us will bleed and affect others in our lives, others for whom we care about. It hits home, and it cuts deep for a lot of us. It's not what happens to you, it's what you do afterwards. How you process the information that you're receiving. We all have choice. And sometimes We make self-destructive choices based on things that happen to us. Sometimes we lash out. Sometimes we get very sad. Sometimes we feel incredibly alone in our pain. But we need to understand, I want you personally to understand that you are not your pain. You are not your trauma. You are not what happened to you. That is not who you are. At core, that is not who you are. It's what you do afterwards that defines who you are. What you put out into the world is what will define who you are. How you are with people, how you are with yourself, how you are with outcomes. That will define who you are, not your past and not your pain. And just because you have pain in you doesn't mean you are inclined to cause pain to others. A lot of us don't choose that path to hurt others because we were hurt. And I want you all to understand that you are not alone in feeling sad, in feeling pain, in feeling fear when it comes to the pain of your trauma, when it comes to people using that as a weapon against you. Because sometimes it happens. And the only reason I bring this up, and I always tell people, a lot of my episodes are based around real life situations in my world, in my hemisphere, my zip code. And very, I always share my past with people. My past trauma, because I want people to understand that I am not my trauma. And despite what I went through, I decided to go towards a different path. I decided to heal myself. I decided to forgive myself. I decided to forgive the person that hurt me, right? So I decided those things. And there was a lot of hard work involved. There was a lot of sadness involved. There was a lot of crying. There was a lot of breakdowns and rebuilds. And that's what happens when you're healing your trauma. There's a lot of breakdowns and rebuilds. There's a lot of, hitting a wall and not knowing how to get over it, how to break down the wall. Do I jump over? Do I break through it? Do I go around it? How do I get past this wall? There's a lot of that when it comes to healing that part of you that's hurt. And moving past it, moving beyond it, and understanding that that is not who you are. And when I share my story with people, there's always that risk that it might be used against me as ammunition to define who it is I am and what actions I take in my present life based on my past. And, recently I had this weaponized against me, and it hurt so bad. And for a long time, I never thought that my trauma and my past would or could hurt me anymore until somebody used it as a weapon against me. And it cut incredibly deep. And I can't remember really sobbing like that over this issue, this trauma that I felt like I overcame until it was weaponized against me. And then I felt, fuck, like I've overcome the pain and the suffering, right? I've overcome the understanding. I've overcome it and I've understood all that is around me. But now it's being used as a weapon against me and being used to bleed out into other parts of my life. And that cuts so deep. And, part of me wanted to jump up and down and scream and get in this person's face and say all these mean things. But I understood the point of it. I understood the goal of that person's actions, or that person's weaponization of, that's even a fucking word, them weaponizing my trauma against me. I understood the goal in mind, right? And that has nothing to do with me, right? When people are hurting and people are, troubled, and they have their own things going on, there's this moment of grasping at straws where they try to project their pain, and they want you to feel as terrible as they feel on the inside. We all have feelings. We all feel deeply. And I'm not saying this as a way to excuse hurtful behavior. But I am saying it as a way of understanding that we are not our trauma. And the difference between you and another person that might use your own trauma against you is that you are choosing to move past and beyond and away from your trauma as a separate being. And they are using it to clump you together because there's something within them that they may not have come to terms with yet. There's something within them. It has very little to do with you and more to do with whatever they are going through within themselves. We have to understand that nobody is perfect. Nobody makes the best decisions 100% of the time. Nobody is a saint. And we will not always, walk on water in everybody's eyes. However, it's important for you to stay secure in who you are, despite what others may say to you, about you. All of that stuff around you. It's important to understand that is not who they perceive you to be, is not who you are. And I know that can be tough, especially in times where you feel alone and you feel broken down and you feel frustrated. But just know that you're not alone. That there's a whole community of people that are growing and moving past these things just as you are. Stumbling and tripping and falling and stumbling around in the dark. We figure it out. We always do. We have our networks. We have each other. I want all of you to know that my DMs are always open to talk, to vent. If you have questions, my DMs are always open to talk, and I'm always here to listen. Always it's an open door policy on the Unknown Podcast the Unknown podcast page. Anyways, I love you all so much, and I will talk to you again next week. Bye-bye now.